All right, what's going on, boys and girls? So we are back. We're doing something I haven't done in a bit. Been at least a few months that I remember. We're doing a Linux video. This is called Gaming on Linux 1 month later. The user's name is Zero. I'm not 100% sure if he actually already did a video that I did a reaction to or not. If that's the case, I guess I'll find out, because honestly, the reaction stuff kind of all runs together after a while. Though the good videos do tend to stick out more. So let's get in to see what Zero has to say.
Saw him about a month and a half ago. I made a video talking about how I switched over to Linux from Windows just because there were a few things that were just kind of annoying me about it, and because I was kind of bored and I just wanted like a challenge, kind of. That's running games in Linux. It's getting a lot better, but it still is kind of like doing it on hard mode, you know what I mean? Like, it's not 100% as easy as just booting up Windows and playing games, but I'm someone who likes to mess around with things and get things working and like do a ton of work to do this, just because, I don't know, it just makes me feel a lot more like accomplished when I actually get a game working and I'm able to play it. So
he is correct. There are a few of us here in the Linux world who do talk about how we need to get the install process and a lot of other things better than what we have. And he is not wrong. As far as the feeling of accomplishment getting a game to work, you, my friend, are the ones that we need doing the Proton DB reports, because that is tremendously helpful. But on the same note, like you said, not everybody wants to do that. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. I don't mind doing it, but I'm kind of lazy also, so I have a console gamer mentality, but to each their own. So props to you for having that sense and feeling of kind of like accomplishment when you get a game working.
Anyway, here we go. On my screen here, I have my desktop. I got Steam. So a lot of people say that, you know, you can't play any games in Linux and all the games don't work, which, if you're really into first-person shooters and battle royale games, those are basically the main two that have issues, I would say you'd probably be best sticking to Windows, at least for now.
You're not wrong either, because the biggest problem is EAC, BattleEye, insert whatever cheat client goes here. Though there are certain exceptions to that. Mostly those are Valve games, though, so just gonna say.
We are doing some work trying to get BattleEye and Easy Anti-Cheat working, which if Easy Anti-Cheat gets working, then you could play Apex Legends and Fortnite at least. And then BattleEye, I'm pretty sure you'd be able to then play like Call of Duty Modern Warfare and just games like that. So right now, if you play those kind of games, you're kind of out of luck. But showing on my screen here, I only have 14 games that do not work at all as far as I know. These ones here kind of work. You have to run them through Steam, which is a little bit different than Proton. And then all of these just work right out of the box. So this is a lot of games. Burnout Paradise Remastered actually does not work. It's like the only game, it's the only new EA game that was released like last week or 2 weeks ago that does not work in Linux. And of course it's the one that I got, so that's great. I'm waiting on a refund for that. I'm not actually 100% sure if I can get one because I have 8 hours, but literally all 8 hours were just me turning it on, because you basically get stuck in the loading screen. It doesn't do anything. I waited there for like 8 hours just to see if something would happen, and nothing did. So hopefully they'll let me get a refund on it, but it's not really that big of a deal if they don't, because I could always just switch over to Windows and play it. Anyway, yeah, all of these games here, so I have 67 games that just work. So that's really cool, and I only have 14 that don't. Some of these up here probably don't work, but these are just random like free-to-play games or games that I got like 10 cents that I just never play. So I just have them in like a don't care category. VR games, most of the ones that I have work, but my headset doesn't. Which that brings me over to this. So basically there's a project called OpenHMD, and it's just open sourced VR headset drivers. And right now they're working on getting 6DOF, or 6 Degrees of Freedom, working right now, which if you look in devices, I don't think any of them actually support it. Yeah. Except for, I'm pretty sure Nolo does. Yeah, that's like the only thing that supports full tracking. But they are very close to getting positional tracking for all of these. And right now, the Rift S doesn't exactly work, but this guy over here to the left, Jan Schmidt, if you look on his Twitter here, he actually has been working for the past about month. I mean, he's probably been working on it more. But I've been seeing in the past about month, he's actually gotten a very early version of the Rift S drivers working. Which is really cool because it's a lot different than all the other headsets because it doesn't use base stations. It actually uses cameras inside the headset. So it's obviously going to be a little bit different getting that to work, and it's probably going to be more difficult. But it's the one that I have, so I don't have it downloaded right now, but a couple weeks ago, right when he talked about it, I think it was about 2 weeks ago. Yeah, right here, June 6th. I went and downloaded the really early version of the driver, and I was actually able to do one of the demos. It doesn't work with Steam VR yet, so I wasn't able to play Project Cars 2. But once that gets working with Steam VR, then any game that you don't have to walk around for will work. So if they can get the controller position tracking, which probably won't be for a while, then you could technically play Beat Saber, even though it would be a little bit weird not being able to move around. But you'd be able to play Project Cars 2, Assetto Corsa, games like that where you're just kind of sitting down and looking around. So that's really cool, and I'm really excited for that because being able to play VR games will just be one less thing that I need to use Windows for. So shoutouts to this guy, because he's been doing a lot of work on this in the past couple weeks, getting it basically completely built from nothing, because a couple weeks ago this didn't even exist, or at least none of it worked. So yeah, shout out to him. But yeah, so
and that's the nice thing, it does show that open source can rapidly change things. Just in your case, like you mentioned, the VR stuff. Personally, I don't care for it. Call me a old school gamer, call me one of the curmudgeons, call me, whatever. To each their own for their gaming preference. Don't really care. But it's cool that it's bringing those options and availability to a subgenre of gaming that is lacking on Linux. And anybody who tells you, oh, you can 100% VR in Linux is full of crap. They are so full of shit that it is pouring out of every pore of their body. So, props to the person that you just pointed out. Anybody who wants this, interest in Linux and VR, there's your area to go look.
So, for the games here that don't work, which are a couple of them, basically all the games up here, most of the newer Call of Duties and things like Warzone. Basically how I do that is I run it through a virtual machine. So if I open up Virtual Machine Manager, right here you can see I have Android x86, I was just kind of messing around with that, but I have a Windows 10 machine right here, which if I open this up, I'm not actually going to run it because I have to switch inputs and do a ton of stuff like that. But right here, I basically have a whole virtual machine running inside my computer, and I have a NVIDIA 1050 Ti plugged into it, which I'm going to try to upgrade my GPU. I'm thinking of getting a RX 5600 or something like that. So if I do end up getting one of those, then I can swap the RX 580 out for that and pass through the 580. So that'll give me...
Okay, so for those that don't understand what he's talking about GPU pass-through via a virtual machine. You need two GPUs for that, one for the host system and one for the guest system. In this case, he's passing through the 1050, but his base station, in this case it's his Linux system, is using the 580, while the VM is offloading onto the 1050 like it's real hardware. Or, utilizing the real hardware, I should say. That's really kind of a super condensed version of what that does.
Much better performance, because the 1050 is not really the greatest for games in 2020. So most games I have to run on the lowest possible settings, but I mean, it lets me play a couple more games. It lets me play VR, things like that, without having to shut down my computer and restart it and do all that, which is really annoying. The only issue with this is that I had to do some workarounds getting it to work. So normally it would split up your graphics cards into different, they're called IOMMU groups. but just the way that my motherboard is set up, that doesn't work. So I had to get a custom kernel, which would then have the patch to manually separate them. And after that, everything just kind of worked. It wasn't as difficult as it sounds. Literally, you have to go into this, add and remove software. I'm on Manjaro, by the way. On my other video, I was using Ubuntu, but I switched over just because I've heard a lot of good things about Manjaro, and this is what I've been using for about a month, so I'm really happy with it. But then what I'm using is Zen.
So to each their own on distro choices, you know, distros don't matter according to some people. No, distros matter to your personal choice. That's when they matter. But props to Manjaro. I'm a Salient OS user on one of my machines. I use Pop OS, and I use everything else. So I feel you. Use what works for you, bud.
VFIO is what it's called, this right here. This is a custom kernel which gives you slightly better performance in some games. Basically takes out all the extra junk that you don't need for just running the desktop, and it also has the patch that lets you separate all of the groups and everything. So literally you just have to install that, restart your computer, and you're good, and then you can do it. So it's not exactly rocket science. It's not as difficult as it sounds. At least if you're on Manjaro or any other Arch-based distro. If you're on Ubuntu or something like that, it might be a little bit more difficult, but I'm not sure. Yeah, with that all out of the way, main reason why I kind of want to make this video is just to give, like, my experience with using Linux and if I would recommend it. So, kind of like what I said before, if you play games like FPS games or Battle Royale, you're probably not going to have that much luck with Linux, at least as it is currently. I mean, it is obviously getting better, and like all these games here, if you play anything before, I think Black Ops 2, they'll just work 100%. Actually, I think Advanced Warfare, yeah, that's the newest one that works. But all of the newer Call of Duties, like Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, games like that, none of them will work. Which, I mean, that's probably fine because those games are dead anyway. But if all you're really going to do is just play Modern Warfare 2 and COD 4 all the time, then go for it, because they work pretty good. But yeah, if you're going to play newer games like that, or if you're going to play like PUBG, you're probably out of luck, at least for now. Like I said, apparently Valve was working with, I think it was BattleEye, to try to get that working. I don't know whatever happened with that, but if something like that actually does end up happening, then that's cool, because then that'll literally open up a ton of new games that'll just work. Some of the other games that do work that I know, I'm pretty sure that all the Battlefield games work. I know Battlefield 4 does, that's the only one that I have, but no one really wants to play Battlefield 1 or 5 anyway, so it's whatever. If you just want to play something like Battlefield 4 and stuff, that works too. Racing games, as far as I know, all of the ones that I've been able to find work. There's actually a Humble Bundle going on right now, which I'm going to try to get today. But they have a ton of racing games here. So they have Grid Autosport, which actually supports Linux natively, Dirt Rally, which does, Dirt 4, which does, F1 2018, which works perfectly fine in Proton, and so do these two. So every single game in this bundle works perfectly fine, except for like maybe these two, in Linux. So I'm kind of hyped to get this, because that'll give me a lot more games to play. But if you play games like racing games and single-player games, you probably have a much better chance of, you know, being able to run them fine. So anyway, going on to kind of my experience with it, I have been frustrated a little bit trying to get some games to work, but that could just be from a number of things, because I see ones that people have 100% gotten working, but for whatever reason, they just won't work for me. And also, right when I installed, I was having some weird issues with, like, some versions working and some not. Like, for example, basically every game, if I used Proton 5, it just wouldn't work. But that seems to be fixed now. I don't know what it was. Maybe the files got corrupted for my Proton version or something.
So that the 5 series has been hit or miss on Proton. I'm just gonna say that. So you're right about the single player games, racing games. There are FPSs and like kind of the more casual FPSs that do work on Linux. I know some people have tried getting Android versions of like PUBG to work and stuff. Not really my cup of tea area, but as far as like single player games and that kind of stuff, yeah, you will tend to have a lot more luck. As far as the Proton stuff, were you using an NTSF drive is kind of my question, because really what ends up happening is the calls that Linux needs to make that gets translated through Wine. Wine doesn't know how to interpret and translate into NTSF Linux drive calls. So, your SDB, SDA, all the drive associations can't sometimes doesn't translate well to like a C drive or a D drive or that stuff. So generically, you usually want to have either an EXT exFAT drive or transplant that over to an ext4. But I know most drives, when it comes to Windows, is NTSF. But exFAT is becoming more and more the standard. Not everything, but for most. So that could be your problem. Not saying it is or isn't, just going by the information you gave.
I'm not sure, but I had to run them in older versions, which wasn't giving me like all the new patches and everything. But that seems to be fixed by now. I don't know if it was something with my drivers or something that just needed to get updated, but it all of a sudden just started working. But going into here, this is Lutris, which is a really good program to use. Some of the games that I've been able to get running that I was really like surprised by are Need for Speed Heat. That is a pretty much brand new game that just works. I have some older ones too, like Rayman 3, Sonic CD, Mario 64. The PC port is actually easier to get on here than it is on Windows. Through the package manager, there's actually just a package for the Mario 64 PC port. And all you have to do is just go into the files, drag in the ROM, and you're good. And it like actually gets updated every once in a while whenever like something changes on the PC port's GitHub page, you actually get an update for it. So you always get the newest version, because I think if you download like the EXE off of someone on YouTube, they probably have the oldest version, like right when it came out, and yeah, because no one's gonna actually compile that themselves. But yeah, emulating is also really good. I've had a lot of luck with emulators. If I actually open up the PS3 emulator right here, for whatever reason it doesn't work through Lutris. But I actually have my PS3 right next to me. I have custom firmware on it, so I was able to dump Gran Turismo 5, and the game works. It sometimes crashes, but that's probably just an issue with the emulator itself, not Linux. But I've had a lot of luck running emulators on here. Pretty much every single one of them I've tried works, except for, it's called Xenia. It's the Xbox emulator, or the Xbox 360 emulator, which is still in very early stages. Like, it barely works on Windows, too. But it doesn't have a native Linux port, so you have to run it through Wine, and it's a little bit weird. But you can...
Yeah, the Xenia stuff is still sketchy at best, as far as, like, stability and stuff. Another one that actually works really well through Wine is CEMU, or CMU, which is the Wii U emulator, so if you want to play your Bayonetta 2s and that kind of stuff at a better frame rate, less load times, that kind of stuff, really fun emulator to use. Check out Linux City /Viper29 Gaming if you want how-tos and that kind of stuff on Wii U emulators.
See here, I just got Gran Turismo 5 opening up. And I actually get better performance on emulators through Linux than I do on Windows, just because there's less overhead, there's less stuff running in the background. Don't know why that's in Japanese. I think it's because I used the game configuration right. I did not mean to do that. I meant to change it, but yeah, let me look. Yeah, Japanese. Okay, that's why. But yeah, emulating is really good, so if you're going to play old games, that's fine. But sorry if I'm kind of rambling. There's just a lot of stuff that I want to talk about. But overall, I've had a lot of good luck with it. I only have like maybe 4 games that I just haven't been able to get working, or that I still play that I have to just run through the virtual machine. But I would definitely recommend trying it out. If you have a USB drive, all you have to do is just install Linux on it, which basically you just burn an ISO onto the drive, plug it in and boot from it. You could actually just like mess around and You might be able to play some games on it through that, but I wouldn't recommend it because it would probably be very slow loading off of a USB drive. But you could at least mess around with Linux through a USB drive and kind of like get a feel for it and see if it's what you want. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it for a lot of people just to try it out because it is nice having something that's different from Windows, and it actually runs a lot smoother than Windows, and it's a lot more customizable. Like you see, this is what my desktop looks like, but you could get different desktop environments. So you can get things like GNOME, which has more of a... It's kind of more of a Mac styling. It's kind of its own thing, but if I wanted to put it towards something, it would probably be more Mac-like. You could get Elementary OS, which is literally Mac, or you can get something like super lightweight that kind of looks like it's from the 90s, like LXDE or something. Yeah, you just have a lot of like customizability, and you could change a lot of things. You could basically do whatever, and you can get some really cool looking stuff. Like if I open up a terminal here, just by control, yeah, right here, you see it's like see-through. It's kind of blurred a little bit, but there's just a lot of customization you can do, and it looks really nice. But definitely would recommend. But that's about it for the video. Sorry if I rambled a little bit. There were just a lot of things I wanted to talk about. Also, this video is being edited completely on Linux. The software that I use, it's called Olive, and it's a pretty good editor. It's probably the closest to what I'm used to on here, but also if you make YouTube videos, that's something you could try out. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed the video at all, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Like I said, I would highly recommend just throwing this on a USB drive and trying it out. You don't have to actually install it, you can just try it. So there's really no harm in doing it. And I don't know, it's just something to do, I guess, while everyone's kind of stuck at home. But yeah, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you guys later. Goodbye.
So, you guys aren't going to get a lot of yelling and screaming, which I think you guys would normally expect from me. He actually did his homework, so I'm thoroughly actually really impressed. The only thing I disagree really is the typical use of Lutris, but if you're like him and you like to tinker, Lutris is kind of the way to go. And I catch a lot of flack for the not recommending Lutris. And it's really only because of one reason. And it's mostly because of when the web clients for things like Origin or EA Play or whatever the hell they're calling it, Ubisoft, the Uplay Store, Epic, anytime those clients update, they're potentially going to break something that the install script that you used didn't pull down. And then you're going to have to wait. Sometimes it can be a short wait. Sometimes it can be a really long wait on the community to update those scripts so that those clients can be updated. Because sometimes they don't always work the way that they are supposed to. Just a caveat. So I don't consider that a good user experience. I fall into don't look at specifically gaming on Linux as a drop-in replacement for Windows gaming. Or Windows PC gaming. Look at it as a console gaming experience. And that is where I think you're going to have a very different level of success and viewpoint. Because anybody who's going to, say, Mac OS, they're not looking at running insert game that wasn't built for the platform here. Same with iOS and Android and BlackBerry users. Take your pick. I'm a big BlackBerry user. I don't expect BB10 apps to work on, Android because it's built in a different way. And take your pick. I love the Cascade stuff, but I don't have the expectation. When I find apps that are built from BlackBerry 10 on Android, it's great because it's like, sweet, I know these apps. I love the design of them. But it's not something I'm invested in to look for. So what I tell everybody who tries Linux, go into it with an open mind. Understand that it's going to be different. And understand that also the way you understand computing is going to be different. Because you have to decouple the years of knowledge that you've acquired from years of knowledge on another system. And it's okay to say, I don't know, don't expect to overnight success everything. Be willing to check alternatives, replacements, call them whatever you want. But to say something's a drop-in replacement is not always the case for some people. For some people it is, because all they need is a clicky web browser and call it good. Some people need more. Want to say nice call on Olive. Doesn't get a lot of love. Definitely one I think that should get more love than it does. Not my cup of tea. I tend to use Centelera GG. That's me. To each their own. But props. I got nothing really more to add other than good job. Like the video. So let's give homie here some props on his content. And we'll subscribe too, because that's the type of content I like to react to. Knowledgeable, but realistic. And that, my friends, is what we should be looking at Linux and making those recommendations for. Realism. And to the user. So, you guys know what to do. Comment, rate, subscribe. You guys can catch my Patreon on the links everywhere on the webpage and all that stuff. And you can find me on the Twitters at Dark1LTG. And yell at me at how wrong I am. Get you guys later on the flip. Peace.